Tonight in the National Report, the government taking drastic steps in response to crime. You'll hear it first right here coming up.
It's about the size of a Cornish hen, but we'll tell you why this cane toad is definitely not a good idea to be touched.
And the story of a father and son that goes terribly wrong. You'll see this story on just one station. The Bahamas Tonight starts now.
Now in HD. ZNS Network presents The Bahamas Tonight. This segment of the news is brought to you by BTC, powered by Lime.
In a move that government expects will cripple the criminal element, some 300 police officers have been deployed to the front line in the fight against crime. Good evening, everyone. I'm Kendino Knowles.
And I'm Charisma Robinson.
National Security Minister, the Honorable Dr. Bernard Nottage, announced today that after consultation with the Police Commissioner Ellison Greenslade and Defense Force Commodore Roderick Bowe, Defense Force officers will now join in the crime fight.
It has been agreed that with effect from today, 150 Defense Force officers and Marines will be made available to the Royal Bahamas Defense Force to execute sedentary and other duties normally carried out by members of the Royal Bahamas Police Force, so that the maximum number of police officers who have been trained to fight crime and to enforce law and order will be deployed to the front line.
It's a move that's been prompted by the nearly 12 murders the country has seen in the last 2 weeks. Crimes the National Security Minister believes are much to do with the ongoing drug trade and existing turf wars. But the government's aggressive plan doesn't just stop at deploying more officers. In fact, Dr. Nottage says the firearms unit has been increased by 100%. Significant resources have been added to the homicide section of the Central Detective Unit. The armed robbery squad has also been adjusted and the drug enforcement unit strengthened. Additionally, the government has already secured 40 additional police vehicles, which will arrive in the capital sometime soon. And there's more.
All police officers stationed in New Providence will immediately revert to 12-hour shifts. This will have the effect of doubling the number of officers on the front line. All officers of the police band, as a consequence of this, have been deployed to frontline policing.
The government's dramatic response to the ongoing violence is something Dr. Nottage hopes will halt the spike in criminal activity, particularly murders, in the shortest possible time. The minister says he's optimistic about the fact that there has been some success in some of the ongoing cases.
The Central Detective Unit, the CDU, has made significant progress in investigating the recent murders, and a number of serious prolific offenders and murder suspects are in custody. There are several other murder suspects and serious offenders who are being sought by the police, and I am very optimistic that they will be arrested in the quickest possible time.
While there's been some progress, the fear of crime remains, but his message to criminals is simple.
There's going to be no let-up in our fight against crime. We will not allow criminal violence and antisocial behavior to subvert the economic development of the country or the peace and harmony and the feeling of safety of our people.
While police are still investigating the circumstances surrounding the country's latest murder, residents of Pitt and Boyd Roads are sharing mixed views on the incident.
Authorities confirmed that the victim was acquitted of an unlawful sex charge less than a month ago. But LaDon Davis tells us residents say for his life to be snuffed out so tragically was rather unfortunate.
When police arrived on the scene shortly after 8 on Thursday night, they met the body of the country's latest murder victim riddled with bullets. He is identified by relatives as 48-year-old Leroy Adderley. Police say Adderley was sitting at the rear of his yard in a conversation with his brother when a lone gunman approached, opened fire, hitting him multiple times about the body. Bloodstains on several rocks on the ground underneath this dilly tree are a constant reminder of the brutal murder of Leroy Adderley, whom residents say has been living in this one-bedroom wooden structure for several months. At the scene, residents told us that Adderley was well known in the area. A few of them we spoke to say their neighborhood is not crime-ridden and this incident was simply an isolated one.
We've never had any murders or whatever you in this community. Like I've mentioned before, just about everybody around here is family. And everybody, families even have their gripes. But everybody, in spite of it all, try to, stay together and be on one accord.
I feel like I could breathe again because I was scared even to come out of my house at night.
It's quite an unfortunate circumstance that it had to happen in this area. From I've been here, it's been quiet, crime-free. They had a prayer just on the park a year and a half ago for the entire area, and I was one of the participants. I assisted in the prayer for the nation, but it's just shocking to know that crime has actually hit your area.
ZNS News also visited Camp Road where several men, including a 17-year-old boy, were gunned down just last week. Founder of Families of All Murdered Victims, Candy Gibson, says now is the time for all Bahamians to quit the blame game and join in advocating stiffer penalties to fight the war against crime.
Moving forward, didn't start hanging. I'm sorry to say, at one point I wasn't for it, but now I'm for it because the people have to fear something. What more to come? What else should we expect to come? But I feel like there's more the judiciary system can do. Right now, the criminals is making a mockery out of the judiciary system.
LaDawn Davis, ZNS Network News.
Police called to the scene of a very different domestic dispute today. Police say a man slashed his elderly father with a samurai sword several times about the body on Patton Street this afternoon. When our news team arrived on the scene, we met a blood-splattered porch and family members who were visibly distraught over the entire ordeal. We're told by police that the two got into an argument, and that's when the son took the sword and slashed his father. The man was taken to the hospital where family members tell us he's in critical condition. Meantime, the son has been taken into custody by police. The victim's daughter spoke with us briefly on the scene.
Very hurt. Daddy don't deserve that. Parents association, yes, but daddy don't deserve that. It's inhuman.
Pastors around the capital putting their shoulders to the wheel to help in the fight against crime. A group of pastors are offering themselves as mediators to people wanted by police. It's an initiative the church men and women believe could help put a dent to the current spate of criminal activities. During a press conference today, Bishop Simeon Hall said that there are 4,000 churches around the country and some 12,000 pastors. With this number, Hall believes they could make a big difference.
To offer pastoral services to anyone who wishes to diffuse negative energy, anger, or thinking of revenge killing. We also call on parents of young men and women, boys and girls, involved in crime to use us as pastors in mediation to talk to their sons and daughters who are caught in a life of crime. We call on all churches to move from self-preservation to community outreach.
Inspector Chrislyn Skipping says she is encouraged by the support of local pastors.
I also want to encourage the church, let's take church outside of the four walls. Outside of the four walls. Yes. The church is the building. But I want the members, and I want to just encourage and challenge all the pastors. Let's get out of the church. Let's get into our communities. A Sunday or Sabbath, we go into the communities, we reach out, we find out what's going on in the community. Let's be our brother's keeper. That is what the church is supposed to do.
If someone has threatened your life, police want you to report them immediately. Head of Urban Renewal Superintendent Stephen Dean says under no circumstance should a death threat be taken lightly.
We know we have been seeing a series of murders, homicides in our area, but we want to put this warning and this alert out to persons. A number of persons' lives have been threatened. They are not reporting it to the police. If your life is being threatened, if someone, so to speak, have put a hit out on your life, whether they say it to you directly, whether you heard by rumors, whether someone tell you, we want you to report them or report the incident to the police. Do not try to take these persons on by yourself or with your group or your gangs. Please report it to the police. We believe that if we could report these matters to police, it could prevent a lot of these homicides from occurring.
Court of Appeal President Justice Anita Allen says it's distressing that so many young men are involved in criminal activity in the country. She noted that these young men, who are potential husbands and potential members of the workforce, are all in jail and therefore cannot make a positive contribution to society. Justice Allen's comments came as she heard the appeals against the sentence and conviction of 11 young men, all in their 20s, who are serving time in prison for murder, drug possession, grievous harm, and stealing. Meantime, during today's proceedings, the Court of Appeal panel of Justice Allen, Justice Stanley John, and Justice Abdullah Kante affirmed the prison sentences of some of the convicts and reduced the prison time of others. The appellate court is scheduled to hear some 54 appeals involving young men during the month of September. Convicted sex offender Andre Brabal was back in court today for the court to confirm that his unlawful sex trial will open on October 7th as scheduled. The 50-year-old former teacher was serving a 35-year prison sentence for having sex with two of his underage male students on Grand Bahama 13 years ago. However, the appellate court quashed his conviction and sentence and ordered a retrial. Following the High Court's decision, Brabal tried to get bail, but the court refused. He remains behind bars at Fox Hill Prison.
With just under 3 weeks left before the flu season officially begins, the World Health Organization, of which the Bahamas is a member, is encouraging residents to get their influenza vaccine as soon as screening begins. The advice comes as still too many people are dying of this communicable disease. Carla Palmer reports.
Even though the flu season has not already officially begun, some people are already getting the flu. The months of October to May are regarded as the flu season, with January to February being the peak months. Dr. Dana Hall is a general practitioner at MediCenter, Prince Charles Drive.
We recommend that persons get the influenza vaccine from during the months of actually September, because what people don't realize is even though you are vaccinated for influenza, it takes about 2 weeks for the antibodies against the strains of the influenza virus to build up in your body.
The U.S. Center for Disease Control and Prevention estimate that between 3,000 to 49,000 people annually die from the flu in the U.S. alone, and as much as 200,000 are hospitalized as a result. While the number of death-related cases here are very few, Dr. Hall says just one case would be unfortunate. This year, a new 4-strain vaccine is being introduced on the market. However, if it doesn't reach our shores anytime soon, residents are being advised to go ahead and get the 3-strain vaccine available. So who should be getting the influenza vaccine? Dr. Hall says everyone except for those high-risk groups.
The risk groups are what we call immunocompromised persons with maybe HIV, kidney problems.
The flu virus is airborne, contracted on surfaces and hand-to-hand contact with someone who has it. And now that you know how you get it, officials say prevention should be key by thoroughly washing your hands and getting the influenza vaccine. I'm Carla Palmer for ZNS Network News.
Prime Minister, the Right Honorable Perry Christie, announced that the Constitutional Commission will continue its mandate of public education and consultation for more recommendations to the Constitution. Prime Minister Christie made the announcement at the 8th annual Dr. Lloyd Barnett Lecture Series at the British Colonial Hilton. Cyan Thompson tells us that the Prime Minister says his government is extending the time frame of the Constitutional Commission's work.
It was just July this year when Commission Chairman Sean McQueenie presented to the government and to the country 73 recommendations to transform and amend the 40-year-old Constitution with input from the Bahamian public. Well, Thursday night at the 8th annual Barnett Lecture Series, Prime Minister Christie told the nation that his government will continue to engage the community in public education to ensure that Bahamians fully understand potential legislative changes for the future.
This is one of the reasons why the government of the Bahamas has also decided to extend the life and mandate of the McQueenie Commission. Its many recommendations should be fully understood and digested by the electorate so that when called upon to make the final decision on them, the electorate can do so on a fully informed and rationally and carefully considered basis.
Prime Minister Christie used the gambling referendum held earlier this year as an example. In his lecture, Prime Minister Christie stated that while his government's position was neutral, governments around the region have been faced with referenda being more about politics than it is about law.
The amending clauses for entrenched provisions, in particular the requirement for popular referenda, effectively limit, perhaps even cripple, the legislative capacity of Parliament. Indeed, this is made clear in the Constitution itself, insofar as it declares that the power of Parliament to make laws for the peace, order, and good government is subject to this Constitution, which of course incorporates the referendum requirement for most constitutional changes. Thus, in a very real sense, the referendum requirements make the people the final check on the system for constitutional reform.
For the ZNS Network News, I'm Cyan Thompson.
In our first look at weather, the remnants of tropical depression Gabrielle continues to fire up some showers over Puerto Rico and the eastern portion of Hispaniola. It is expected to move north and then northeast over the next couple of days. But outside of our studios just now, we have partly cloudy skies, temperature 84 degrees, relative humidity 71%. Your winds out of the east at 5 knots. Barometric pressure 1,014.3 millibars. That's 29.95 inches, and it is steady. But stay tuned. Temperatures around the Family Islands. Travel and boating forecast is still to come.
Coming up, more in the killer toad on the loose in the Bahamas.
And then in sports, we've got softball highlights from last night. You're watching the Bahamas Tonight.
This portion of the news is brought to you by Shell Helix Ultra. Performance you can see.